there. All right. So welcome to the second Roundtable Roundup. And today is March 13th, 2019. And we will be talking today about the national emergency votes, which happened... Well, we talked about it last week, but we figured we should continue on because some things did happen that were a little surprising, as well as Ilhan Abdullahi Omar, who was the Congresswoman accused of saying anti-Semitic comments on Twitter. But first, we will introduce ourselves. I will start with myself. I'm Justice Newell. I'll go to my right.
I am Jacob McGregor.
I am Lucian Sakeli.
And our guest today.
I'm Mrs. Butler.
All right. So with that, we will start with the opening statement. Fred?
Okay. Yes, I will be reading an article written by Andrew Ross, PA Club style. Yeah, he's not here today. He's got a doctor's appointment. But this is what he wrote about the national emergency vote. On February 19th, President Trump declared a national emergency shortly after the government shutdown over the spending bill that caused controversy in Congress due to the provision for more money allocated for the proposed border wall. President Trump said in an interview that we're spending $1.6 billion now. There's a plan for another $1.6 billion, but I'd like to ask this room if we could increase it. The president, however, wanted a sum that would almost be 11 times that current amount allocated funds at $18 billion.
Wow.
The current issue at hand is that the president has declared a national emergency in order to obtain funding for his wall. In a press conference, he stated that we're going to confront the national security crisis on our southern border, and we're going to do it one way or the other. This has led to a fierce debate in Congress, and now there has been a motion that has passed the House of Representatives to strike down this declaration, which is now going through the Senate. The Democratic Party, for the most part, has voted along party lines and has voted against the declaration. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat from California, was quoted saying that the declaration undermines the separation of powers and Congress's power of the purse, a power exclusively reserved by the text of the Constitution, the first branch of government, the legislative branch, a branch co-equal to the executive. The Republican Party, on the other hand, is divided in voting for the declaration. Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, was stated that he can't vote to give extra constitutional powers to the president. The House vote fell upon party lines as expected by political analysts, as the Democrats have a majority in the House, with the vote being 245 to 182 against the declaration, with 13 Republicans supporting the Democrats. In just 3 days, the Senate will vote on the declaration. The forecasted outcome is uncertain, though, as the Senate has a Republican majority, but with senators like Rand Paul voting against the declaration, the vote is expected to be close. However, many think that the president will simply veto the bill and the bill will stay dead. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was quoted saying, "The president in all likelihood is going to get a measure that he will veto, and it will almost certainly be sustained. The veto will be sustained in the House."
All right. Well, thank you. Definitely put you to work with that long one.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing to note there is that the price will increase to about $18 billion. So you can imagine that it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, but instead of a city of emerald, it's more like a wall.
Yeah, that's a good one, bud.
Yeah. So, okay, so now we've moved into giving background about this piece here, which a lot of it we covered last week, but some things have happened. So before the House vote, Speaker of the House, Pelosi, tweeted that members of Congress all swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution. On Tuesday, the House will vote on Joaquin Castro's legislation to defend the separation of powers following @real Donald Trump's decision to ignore the bounds of the law with his emergency declaration. And that was reported from Vox News.
Right.
Vox with a V.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you also brought up that the resolution in the House was passed 245 to 182. I got that from New York Times. So as you can see, it's a pretty close split there. I mean, at least. And that split is supposed to continue into the Senate. And if people vote along party lines, which they expect will, at least for the Democratic side, in the Senate, all 47 Democrats are reported, or are supposed to, I guess, if you want to think of it that way, vote against it. And they think they can secure at least 4 Republicans to join them with that. So it's not supposed to, it's supposed to be quashed after this, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So do you have any?
Yeah, so other than that, the only real change has been a lot of statements being released about it. Like Pelosi has been releasing a lot of statements, such as she said they will not let the Senate nullify the president's unconstitutional acts, as in like the Senate wanting to just kind of let him do that. And she's saying that we're not going to let him do that unconstitutional act. And Mitch McConnell, of course, the Senate Majority Leader, a Republican, said that a veto will, of course, probably happen on the president's end, and it would be very hard for that to be overridden.
Yeah,
as
two-thirds vote.
2/3 vote in each chamber.
Yeah, it's
Right.
hard if they're barely squeaking by with 51 people against. So
Right.
I did read that if the president did veto it, it'd go to a joint resolution basically.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So they need 2/3 in the House, and then it goes back to the Senate.
Right.
And at which point, the Senate would basically have the power, and that Mitch McConnell was very much publicly warning the White House that they should avoid that vote at all costs. So puts the power back in the Democrats' hands in terms, not that Trump is ever too worried about
Right.
perception, but a lot of the senators don't want to be forced to vote for 2 reasons. One, it shows divisiveness in the Republican Party.
yeah,
And 2, those that understand or believe, let me say, so I keep my own slant off it, that believe it's unconstitutional,
Right.
don't want to be put in a place where they might be voting against the wishes of their constituents who don't understand the ramifications that if President Trump can call this national emergency, if we have a Democratic president next, why can't they call a national emergency for, let's say, gun control?
True.
and
Yeah.
Oh, you were going to say something, Jay?
That scares me.
So, what I find interesting about Ms. Pelosi's comments there is that she's saying that it's ignoring the bounds of law with this emergency declaration, which President Trump cited the National Emergencies Act of 1976, which does not specify what a national emergency is.
Right.
So that, unfortunately, I would say is left up to interpretation, and it's definitely an unpopular declaration. So I don't know if it's necessarily against the bounds of law. Definitely not. He's not going to win any popularity contests in the next 20 years or anything like that, I'd say.
Do you think he negates any possibility to use that loophole with his ensuing text that said he didn't really have to do it, he just wanted to speed it up and make it happen quicker?
Definitely doesn't paint him in a great light there. I can
Definitely, definitely doesn't. Not in an intelligent light.
Yeah, I've always believed that even if you didn't agree with what you were saying, you shouldn't let other people know that you don't agree with it.
Yeah.
So I think he should have just been a little less honest there, saying, well, it's what I wanted to set out to do, so I'm going to do it. So I think that definitely hurts his case there.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how well that's going to turn out. Legally, I would say he does have a basis for the national emergency, but he just doesn't do. He didn't really do anything socially to help that at all.
Right. He's really going after it and has a lot of strong characteristics in that way, but he might not be going after it in the right way.
Yeah, strong characteristics is a great way to describe the president.
So I didn't
He's
hear
bold.
your podcast yet
He's very
from last
bold.
week, but
Which is on our website, by the way.
which I do have.
YouTube
Right.
channel.
Have you? Did you discuss any of the legal obstacles regarding even the probability or possibility of the wall, not to mention some of the environmental?
We discussed some of the grounds for the national emergency itself, and I think we talked. Or were you talking about the environment by the border?
Well, just kind of the cart before the horse. Like, is it even possible to build this wall based on?
I think we talked about with Mr.
tribal
Morley.
lands and moving water and Mexico and
it's
U.S.
rough
rights
terrain.
to rainwater.
Yeah, it's already rough terrain in a lot of the places, and I think we talked about it with Mr. Morley. But it would cost a lot of money, and that's what he's trying to get, I think.
Oh yeah.
But boy, I don't know. It is a lot of money, and maybe it could be spent on better things like the military.
Well, it was taken from
right?
the drug acquisition fund, so like.
Yeah, he's taking the drug dealers' money. And
Well, yeah.
yeah.
It's ironic if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Using drug money to pay for a wall against Mexico. All right.
Could be.
So, okay. So does anyone have any final thoughts about this before we move on to the next one?
No, I think that's about it.
All right, then with that, we will move into the second topic, which is, I'm butchering her name because it's...
You can call her Omar.
Omar, yeah.
Omar.
Congresswoman Omar's perceived anti-Semitic tweets.
Uh-huh.
So we have Jacob McGregor reading instead of McKenna, I believe.
That's correct. So once again, this is by McKenna Campbell Fox, and I'm reading it for her today. As of late, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar from Minnesota has come under fire for a barrage of comments deemed by many as anti-Semitic. These aforementioned comments have triggered bipartisan backlash from Ms. Omar's colleagues. Ms. Omar has a heightened level of attention upon her from the time she was elected to her office, as Omar is one of the first 2 Muslim women ever elected to Congress and is, herself, a Somalian refugee who came to America as a child. Many see Omar's success and election as a representation of America as the diverse melting pot and a step in the right direction for tolerance and equality. She has enjoyed immense popularity and took 3/4 of the vote amongst her constituents upon election, and while in public office, Omar has become somewhat of a controversial political figure. Controversy was sparked when Omar disputed Israel's status as a democratic nation, said that American support of Israel was entirely motivated by money, and that pro-Israeli activities were pushing allegiance to a foreign country. Upon receiving reprimand, Omar has apologized for some of her remarks, and has fervently denied being anti-Semitic. Her supporters staunchly claim that her remarks were taken out of context, and that Omar was simply talking foreign policy, which is an aspect of her job. Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish himself, has defended Omar and claimed that the resolution passed by the House is targeting Omar and will stifle debate. The resolution that was passed by the House, with a 407 to 23 landslide vote, was broadly worded and condemned hate against Jewish, Muslim, and Latino Americans, among other minorities. Some Democrats pushed for the resolution to be specifically a stand against anti-Semitism, but that idea did not prevail. Nancy Pelosi, who has defended Omar publicly, has claimed the resolution was not in response to comments made by Omar, and stressed that she is not out to police the speech of House members, and that Omar, as a young member of the House, simply does not yet understand the weight of her words. Some of Omar's harsher opponents found part of her response to the criticism she has faced highly inappropriate. Omar has addressed some of her comments with an apology, but what seems to be her response to the critique highlighted attacks she has received personally for being a Muslim. In particular, she tweeted a photo of a threatening graffiti that was upon a Minnesota gas station and suggested that there was a double standard present. It has been suggested that Omar is playing a victim card in order to divert attention away from her poor word choice. The situation is particularly difficult, as the words of this Congresswoman are interpreted by the country, all of them who come from different walks of life, and thus have different perceptions. These are the facts.
All right. Seems like they both.
Andrew left that out of his article.
Yeah, I did. But that's all right. Yeah, they both.
But yeah, there was a
you to
lot
work
of New York Times in there, BBC, and a hint of Fox.
Just a hint, though.
Just
All right. So now that we have the opening statement read, let's move into the background of it. So she is the Congresswoman Omar is the second Muslim Congresswoman, Democrat from Minnesota, and I got that from CNN. And the House voted 407 to 23. All of those 23 were Republicans to condemn her comments, which is, I think, kind of funny that only Republicans voted to not condemn them.
Mm-hmm.
And here are some of the tweets that caused this controversy. So in responding to journalist Glenn Greenwald, she suggests that the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, a Republican from California, and other members of Congress support Israel because they received donations from pro-Israel groups. And this was the quote, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby," and then musical notes. She also responded with, in response to a similar text, or a similar piece, AIPAC, which is the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee that was created in the 1980s to promote pro-Israel relations with the United States. So there's that. And recently, even, she has gotten into a little bit more trouble with things that she has said about former President Barack Obama.
Really?
Yes, which caused caused a very tense situation in the Democratic Party. As she said, "We don't want anybody to get away with murder because they are polished. We want to recognize the actual politics that are behind the pretty face and the smile." And she was talking about President Obama, and that was to Politico magazine, referring to how he was not much better than President Trump.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, seeing how the
She's
Democratic
very
Party-
colorful.
Shots fired.
Yeah, the Democratic Party, it seems, in recent times has used President Obama as like a stepping stone, kind of like how the Republican Party uses President Reagan. So just doing
Yeah.
this...
So the fact that she's against him is really interesting.
Yeah.
Her being
Or
a
if
Democrat.
not against him, she's not.
Yeah. Oh. Right.
If not against him, she at least said. I mean, she's not a fan for sure, right? You don't say that
Right.
publicly,
Right.
but I would say she's saying that neither party has gone far enough in doing what really needs to be done. So just because you say it in a way that is acceptable and civil doesn't
that
mean
makes
you're
sense.
actually serving the interests.
She's not down with the OPP.
No.
So, all right. All right. Anyone else have any comments before we just get into the discussion about it?
No, not really.
Nope. All right. So I brought this up a little earlier, but I thought it was pretty interesting how the vote was 407 to 23, and those 23 were all Republicans that voted against condemning her. I'm not quite sure what the reasoning behind that was, because it seemed like this is more than a supermajority of the votes. And every Democrat and nearly all Republicans voted to condemn anti-Semitism in general.
I think you have to keep in mind of recent comments from President Trump that they decided not to condemn in the name of freedom of speech or understanding in terms of like when the neo-Nazis came through Charlottesville and he said there's some pretty good people there, and they're like, no, this is what he meant. And so I think it was probably politically motivated to not allow that to come back, to say, well, we're not going to impede freedom of speech or analyze everything that comes out. That's based on absolutely no sources, just probably good political sense. Jake?
Very possible.
Actually, they released a statement. A lot of the 23 Republicans that voted against it said that the broadening of the bill to include so many of these other groups and mentioned like anti-Semitism third or fourth, watered down the comments and didn't mention Ilhan Omar specifically, so that the bill was meant as a distraction from the comments that the Congresswoman had made, and that is why they were voting against it, because it didn't do what they intended it to do. Because there was a resolution before in the House against Representative, I think it might be Steve Scalise. I might be getting this wrong, but he had made really borderline white nationalist comments for most of his career, and then when something went over the line, every congressman voted to condemn him for his comments, Republican and Democrat, and his name was mentioned specifically in the resolution. And they thought that an equal standard should be applied to Ilhan Omar.
I think I would tread carefully here for a couple reasons. One, she has 2 tweets, not including the Obama one, which had nothing to do with the topic, the anti-Semitism.
Right.
One said was about where does money come from for people voting the way they vote. And she has been very vocal on lobbyists. And she says it's all about the Benjamins.
Yeah.
So I think is that anti-Semitic? Maybe. Does it have to be? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because it's
Right.
a really common cliche that we all use.
Yeah.
And then the other one, she very specifically said that the world is being hypnotized by Israel, and that was called anti-Semitic because it's a descriptor they use very carefully or commonly to align with the how the Nazi Party worked by hypnotizing its followers. And so she's basically saying the Jews are hypnotizing. So it seems analogous to me that that's a 180 flip, and that's a word that I use on a regular basis, that most of us, it's not an uncommon word. Now, I'm not defending it and saying it's not anti-Semitic. I'm just saying we have a young, female, brown Muslim that is very vocal in our government, and that
Not something that
even-
can be said for the rest of the world.
and it's going to unsettle a lot of people.
Yeah.
We've proven that. And at the same time, I didn't even know this part. It was in McKenna's article, but someone came up with like she's playing the victim card when she ran into some Muslim racism.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're saying, oh, you're playing the race card. So where is she allowed to talk about? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
Right.
so
Yeah, I know what
it's
you mean.
there is no safe place for her. If she comes out as a strong position, then it's being used this way. If she comes across as really a target, then she's playing the race card. And I think that is a way we have made sure to disempower people of color in our country for a long time. Oh, you're playing the race card. Well, there actually is a race card in this country. So I'm just treading carefully on this one. I don't know enough about her. Don't know a ton about her politics.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting to let her show who she is for a little bit longer.
All right. Yeah. Plus, she's a freshman
that's fair.
congresswoman, so
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
she may do a complete 180 on some of these things or none of these things. Really, you can't predict the future well, and that was shown in the 2016 the presidential election. And yeah, I guess this comes down to how powerful being uncomfortable really is, which sounds like it could be a blended model book, like The Power of Being Uncomfortable. But
I'm writing that down. This will be my memoir.
oh, there we go.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, you heard it here first. So, yeah, I thought that was very interesting at the end of her article how she did mention that some people were calling this a race card, which
Right.
I'd say it's pretty typical rhetoric now to say things like that in describing one viewpoint. And some people would claim that that's the basis of what President Trump has been doing, but to say that, I guess I'm just kind of digressing into a point that's not really relevant to this, but I think this is just very representative of the modern political culture, is using terms like the race card or blaming it on something other than what they're actually talking about to rationalize or to deter a subject.
Well, even anti-Semitism, using
Yeah.
that when she's trying to say, even if it was, I hope it wasn't.
Yeah.
But there's a problem in how our voting is influenced by PACs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And unfortunately, our government is almost built such that two parties are poised against one another. Democrat with the two-party system.
Oh boy.
In the way it's structured in Congress, especially. But she did say, Omar says, "I am told every day that I am anti-American if I am not pro-Israel. I find that to be problematic, and I am not alone. I just happen to be willing to speak up on it and open myself to attacks," which I think is brave of her.
And very American.
Yeah. So, Yeah, I think that's what makes America really special. Is that like we're totally fine with, and we have these people of different backgrounds in our national Congress, and who wear their hijabs in Congress, whereas in France it's like illegal to wear a hijab, types of things like that across the world.
Wow.
From what I understand, it might be wrong, but
That's a funny thing to type into Google. A job in France.
yeah, that's what Mr. Barton said to me one year.
Oh,
So
it might be true.
yeah.
All right. So, does anyone have any final comments before we close off?
No, that would be it, I think.
All right. Yeah.
That's all.
You're good? All right.
I just want to say thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah. Our pleasure. I'm glad you could work this into your busy schedule.
Yeah, and be sure to tune in to our next one, everybody
Yeah.
listening to this.
Who knows what it's going to be about? It may not have
Exactly.
even happened yet. Who knows?
Who knows?
All right. Well,
Stay tuned.
thank you for listening.